Here's a few news things I thought were interesting. So Ethereum is going through their merge, their change to Ethereum 2. It's a giant step forward. Probably the most important aspect of this for ordinary people is that it will consume a whole lot less energy, and it may reduce the carbon footprint of the cryptocurrency space. It certainly will reduce it, and if it works as they're hoping, they will become more popular than Bitcoin and sort of edge Bitcoin out of the market and end proof of work in the whole crypto space. So that's happening over the next week or so, and they just went through the last test, and they say everything's working pretty well, so presumably this is going to happen and not mess everything up. You know, in the past there have been disasters trying to make changes in cryptocurrency networks where the blockchain forks or it stops dead or something, and Ethereum is trying very hard to avoid that. So we'll see. I didn't know this. You know, Mudge, a very famous guy in the hacking space, was Twitter's chief security officer for a year and a half, and then he was fired as part of the transition to new leadership. And he then went and filed whistleblower complaint, saying that Twitter was greatly neglecting security and ignoring his advice and such. And here they say they paid him a $7 million payout with a non-disparagement clause, and yet he was able to do all this through whistleblower protection despite the non-disparagement clause. So I find that interesting legally. That would tend to suggest that non-disparagement clauses are not worth as much as people think they are. Anyway, Hillary Clinton has come up. Of course, the Republicans have been vigorously raising her and saying that she did the same thing Trump did with all these secret documents. And she is strongly defending herself, and this is a fact checker of this that seems to say that she is in fact correct, that none of the documents that she sent to her private email server were in fact classified. What happened is some of them were changed after she sent them, and some of them had confusing markings or missing markings, but in fact none of them were really classified, and she therefore did not mishandle classified documents the way Trump has, and this seems to be a pretty strong argument. Doug Mastriano, there's an interesting article about him. He is a candidate for, I think, governor in Pennsylvania, and is very secretive. He does not talk to the press, and he won't even let the press into his campaign events. The only people he'll let in are far-right podcasters like Steve Bannon, and they managed to find out what he's doing, and he has a personal prophet who claims to get miraculous statements from God saying that he is going to be the governor, and all the left-wing people they dislike, like Nancy Pelosi, are going to be tortured horribly and stuff. So he does seem to be very, very insane, and his campaign seems very, very insane, and yet he is a front runner. I mean, I don't know if he's the front runner, but he's a serious contender to win. It's we're headed for a disturbing place. From the looks of it, the next couple elections are likely to put a lot of complete lunatics, even more than before, in power. And if Trump gets back, the lunatic squad will be in charge of the country. They found an anti-cancer drug that may also work for COVID-19 and against all variants because it attacks a different part of the process. It's a new category of antivirals that disrupts viral replication by attacking a different step in the process, and it seems to be effective against an enormous number of viral infections like HIV and SARS and several others. So it sounds great, and hopefully we'll have another category of antivirals. I know the Paxlovid that they'll give you if you're in a high-risk group and you get COVID, which I am, and I took it. That is actually, I understand, a repurposed anti-AIDS drug. Same kind of thing. Antivirals, there have been a few of them. They have not been very good, and some of them have had nasty side effects. As far as I can tell, Paxlovid doesn't have any nasty side effects, but they, anyway, we're making real progress developing new antivirals. This is interesting. This woman from India was one of those people who can do incredible computations in her head, so she could get the 23rd root of a 201-digit number in 50 seconds. And I've heard of these people. At first, you wouldn't believe it's possible, but there are many documented, well-documented cases of this, and she actually wrote a book explaining how she does it. I sort of am inclined to get that book and learn. It's not that she's got some mystic power in her brain that we don't have. She has some clever technique we don't know, apparently. So it might be worth reading that book to find out how they do that. Anyway, New York has polio. Polio continues to spread. They had one symptomatic case, and I'm not sure if that person got paralysis. The problem with polio infects a lot of people, and only like a small percentage of them, like 1% of them, actually get paralyzed. But that's terrible, of course. And, that's right, polio is really bad. And so they are declaring a state of emergency and freaking out. They can tell by analyzing the wastewater that polio is spreading, even though since it so rarely paralyzes people, there are not very many symptomatic cases, but there's going to be before long. So then the question is, how many of us have been immunized against polio? And I don't even know if I have been. I don't really know. When the polio vaccine was given, I know as a kid growing up in the early 60s, there was some kind of vaccinations of babies back then. I don't even know what it was. Anyway, it has revived interest. How many of us have been vaccinated against polio, and maybe we should all get? Yeah, that's another issue. You're quite right, Glow, bringing it up. The problem is, even if you brought out a polio vaccine, back then everybody would take it. Now, obviously, a lot of Americans refuse to take it, which is another problem. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Right now, they have detected it in New York, but I've been hearing of this for a month or two. It's probably spreading beyond New York by now, I would think. So the Queen died, as everybody must know by now, and there was one person on Twitter that said, well, I hope she died in agony because the British Empire is horrible and she's horrible, and a bunch of people got mad, and this was a college professor, but she had what I thought was a pretty good argument. I mean, she is from, I think, Kenya, and she said, this person has massacred or displaced half of my family, sponsored a genocide, and the people are still trying to overcome the consequences, and that's all quite reasonable. I think people from Jamaica have similar concerns. I mean, the fact is the Queen presided over the British Empire in a time of colonialism when they did all sorts of really terrible things, and these people have reasonable arguments that, they don't like the Queen, they don't like the British Empire, they think they should all be, jailed or something. So anyway, and they should have reparations and things like that. Some people are saying she should be fired from her college, but the college is defending her, Carnegie Mellon. They're saying, well, we have freedom of speech. We don't agree with these sentiments, but she's free to say it. And, I think she has a reasonable position. Perhaps she's chosen to express it at a time when it'll certainly inspire a lot of backlash, but I can't fault somebody in a department of ethnic studies from saying that the British Empire did horrible things and we should be mad at them. That's not an unreasonable position to take. So Girls Do Porn was a porn site, and apparently the guy that ran it did horrible things, blackmailed and tricked women into participating in this. And so then he went on the run, and now he's on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. $100,000 reward for him. There's the guy. So it's rare that sort of thing makes it to the FBI's most wanted list, but it is, that's where we are. I know for years, innocent images, child porn has been one of the top law enforcement priorities of the FBI, and it looks like other forms of porn are getting there. Illegal forms, obviously. Sex trafficking, I guess, is what this amounts to. So the U.S. lawmakers are telling Apple that they shouldn't be using Chinese chips in the iPhone. Now, I know all the iPhones are made in China, and I thought pretty much all the chips we use in everything come from China. So the part that surprises me about this is, aren't they using Chinese chips in all the iPhones now? Haven't they been all along? So maybe they come from Taiwan. I know Taiwan, I think, is actually the #1 maker of chips. But anyway, it reminds me, there's a lot of talk about these. Yeah, maybe it's probably Taiwan. There's a lot of talk about these supply chain issues, and I'm no different than everybody else. I really don't know where all the components of hardware come from in the devices I use. And as people bring this up, your software and hardware components, we should start paying attention to where they come from. You might not like where they're coming from. Anyway, that's enough of the news.